Hi, welcome to week 4 of Prior Learning Assessment Portfolio Development. This week is focusing on your first draft learning narrative. So the learning narrative is kind of the consolidated evidence that you're going to use to try to justify that you get credit for one particular course. So again, connecting all the pieces of this process is, in weeks in weeks 2, you went through and you documented your experiences, and now we're continuing this process. So we're doing reflective observation, but especially this week, we're focusing on this abstract conceptualization. So, okay, great, you were an accountant or you're a bookkeeper for 10 years, but can you use the right terms? Can you generalize so that you can apply it to other situations? Using the example from math, you might know the equation and you've been plugging in the same things into the equation in the same situation for 10 years. But if someone gives you a slightly different situation, can you apply that equation? In accounting, it's the same type of thing, right? So in terms of how to organize your learning narrative, if possible, use the learning outcomes from each course syllabus as your outline for your learning narrative. You're trying to demonstrate you have expertise. What I strongly recommend is if you're in a topic where there's common textbooks, you're going to want to go to those textbooks to identify key areas that you want to cover. You may want to research some topics to use proper terminology. I'll use some examples. And you want to translate your experience into standard terminology used in the field when possible. Typically, learning narratives are from 3 to 10 pages. They can go as high as 20 pages. And you want to use the course rubric as a guide, so you get a 4 for each item. So now I'm going to go and explain what some of these steps should look like for you. So one of the things, I'm going to use the example of accounting, right? So in accounting, you have these student learning outcomes. So what I would recommend you do is you actually cut and paste these into your learning narrative section. It looks like there's 6 actually in this case. So you would cut and paste all 6 of these into your learning narrative section, and then that's essentially like your section headings that you're going to use in there. So you would start off, and you need to basically show proof, and you may actually get into this, and you may say, you know what, I don't meet the requirements of this, right? So in some of these, this is actually, whenever I look at this is a really well-written outcome. So explain the purpose of accounting by mastering the language of business and accounting terminologies, understanding the objectives and goals of accounting and information systems, and the role of financial statements. So, so if I were trying to demonstrate this, I would, type in some searches, just because you probably know this, but you probably want to understand it. Purpose of accounting. If you're going to ever quote something, you have to reference it, right? But you want to be able to explain some of these things. So you're starting with this. What's the purpose of accounting? And what is the role of financial statements? So and you can look at what this is. If you're gonna quote, you need to provide proper references. Now the other thing, so this is a financial accounting course, and there's a textbook here. You could use the exact textbook if you want, or you could just look up a generic textbook. You want to understand the field. And in this case, I'm just going to go to Amazon.com, and I typed in financial accounting. And I'm not going to use the financial accounting for dummies because I want to use something that's more academic. So this financial accounting, Robert Libby, I could use that, or let me just go ahead and see if the financial accounting tools for business decision making is probably in here too. Let me see. And what you can do is, and it doesn't have to be the exact version, you can click into it. And then usually in Amazon, this is a good example why I should have used the other one, because in this case, I can't see inside the book. Whereas the previous book that I was looking at, this book, it has this look inside. So what I would recommend you do so this will give you more details than the course objectives. And if I were going through in writing the section, myself for this and trying to justify, I would want to make sure I'm meeting the requirements of the objectives, but I'd also want to understand the more detailed version. I'm having a hard time finding the course outline. Here we go. I think this is the course outline. But you can try to find a book that has a course outcome or course outline, and you could use this if you needed to. You can see the table of contents, and you can say these are the different topics. So the balance sheets, the liabilities section, understanding income and cash flow, analyzing the financial statement. So you want to understand what are the main topics. So this isn't the best source. I try to find a textbook that you can look inside, and then you're going to research some of these things, because in this first outcome, it said understanding accounting terminology. Well, you need to demonstrate that you have a good, understanding of terminology. So balance sheet, you could Google what is a balance sheet and then try to understand. And, in this case, so actually, I worked with Jeff, and his first version of this, he basically described what he did. So he was describing his experience. Now, relating this back to the rubric, I went through this rubric and I said, the first time he went through it, I think, he wasn't at a 4. I said, okay, you've demonstrated some of these outcomes, but not all of them. He didn't do a very good job initially of distinguishing from his experiences and the concepts in theory from practice. So I said, you need to be able to cite broader theological or conceptual links related to that. And then, use examples of what you learned and how you applied it in other contexts. So in his case, I went back and I said, you need to tie what you learned, because initially he said, he balanced the books, and he wasn't being as specific really as like I would expect someone who knew accounting to do. So I said, you need to go back, more. And he actually highlighted all the key terms that he was doing. So he did his homework. He looked up all these terms. He said, I got accounts receivable, interest, liabilities, assets and capital, liabilities. And, I could tell from his first portfolio that he knew the stuff. He just didn't know what to call the stuff. In some cases, or if he knew what to call it, he didn't know the right term, to use. So what he went through is he then, for each of these things, his financial statement, in order to know how well the organization's doing, you need to know what's our profit and what's the equity. That's a pretty big picture thing. So he showed mastery of that, and then he explained all these different concept. So, and he even went through and explained managerial accounting compared to financial accounting, and a lot of these other things. So that's what you're trying to do. Now, accounting, part of the reason why I use that as an example is it's actually fairly easy to use an example of someone who, okay, I ran a business, but I didn't know the right terms. And that's, something that's fairly common. So as you go through this, I recommend that you go through, and after you do your learning narrative, or as you're doing your learning narrative, make sure that you cover not just all the outcomes. So that's the step 1. So you want to make sure that you've covered all of the outcomes, but then you want to make sure that you've done these other things. Have you identified, all these things so you could get a 4. Now, you may think you get a 4, but then the faculty member may have a different interpretation, and that's important because generally the faculty member knows how these, rubrics are used. So what's important to recognize how we're going to go in the rest of this course. So up to now, you're doing your first learning narrative. So this will be for 1 3-credit course. And And usually you want to go with your best, whatever thing that you have that you think is your best bet. Don't go with one that might be more of a stretch, because whenever I've worked with students, they might have, two that are like, sure, almost, they have extensive experience, and then another one that's borderline, and then like a fourth or fifth that they're probably not going to get credit for, but they really want to try. And usually what I do is I, have them do the first one, and then they do the second one, and then they get to the third one, and they might do the third one or might not, and then they give up on the fourth or fifth because they realize they don't have what they need. So then what you're going to do is you're going to revise it based on feedback to try to get essentially 4s on all the items, and then you'll start adding courses. So you're going to start doing additional portfolios for your courses, and then you're going to do a second draft. So this should be essentially like a rough draft of everything combined. You might, say have 3 different 3-credit courses at this point that you think should be 100% done. And then between week 7 and 8, you might be able to, you might be able to, add one more. Now we do give you a window after the course where you can submit additional portfolios. I think it's in the handbook. I can't remember what it is. I think it might be 3 months. I can tell you though, that out of like 20 students who said, I'm going to submit some things in the next 3 months, we maybe had 1 or 2 that actually did it. So if you want to get this done, get it done now. If you don't get it done now in the course, you're probably not going to get it done. So if you have any questions, work with your faculty member. And just as a reminder, most of the rest of the course is just going to be going back and forth, with your faculty member, and it's going to be doing a lot of writing, a lot of research, and demonstrating these things. We're not going to be giving you a lot more content. So most of the rest of the course is going to just be adding to your portfolio. Now, the one thing that I didn't cover that I want to go a little bit more extensively is what are the types of evidence that can be used. So as I mentioned before, so in this portfolio that we had as our sample, he had an amazing amount of supporting material, probably a lot more than you need. So he has, these appendices. So for human resources, he has a lot of things that he used there. Financial planning, he used some of the financial statements that he used. For food services, he has a lot more documentation. So you can look at examples of what he did in this. So here, he showed the performance appraisals he did in human resources. He showed a lot of the other things that he had to develop as a manager, and then he also later provided all his financial statements. Now, what most people do for their appendices would be something like if you had any sort of certifications or things along those lines. So you can provide those now, or you can provide them elsewhere. In many ways, I've worked with auditing departments, and you got to follow the rules. But often if you have, a lot of documentation and they're going to sample the rules, then that's going to help. So the more evidence you can provide, the better. You need to meet all these standards, but the more evidence you can provide, the better. So anything you have, I would say, throw it in the appendix for that. So, and you're going to be having more live sessions in this course where the faculty member can help answer your questions. And if you have any other questions, you can email or post to the bulletin board for the course. So thanks a lot. Bye.